Hello everyone, my name is Tatti. I'm currently working in the Bern University of Applied Sciences in Switzerland, Bern, in a group called Soil Use and Conservation. We have many projects. Sorry, there's some noise in my mic. Mainly about collecting basic data in the field, and we are working on different scales from the soil sampling to things linked with satellite images as well as pictures taken by drones. And with all these things, we try to better understand the landscape in the use of the soil, especially in agricultural areas. This last year, most of the soil mapping projects in Switzerland were done in agricultural areas, or some of them in forested area, but most of them in agricultural areas. And such places are not really the place for well-developed humus forms, because you don't really get these thick layers of organic matter like in forest. And moreover, there is a lot of work done by men and women with big machines in agricultural things. So the soil is kind of making anew each year, and there's not a lot of humus forms. There is, but not a lot. And as a matter of fact, after all this project linked with soil mapping in Switzerland, there is now a lot of new theoretical and practical tools developed with soil, but we still have a lot of lacking things about humus forms, especially because it was not really needed by people working in such a topic. And hopefully and luckily, there is no revision of the humus form classification system going on in Switzerland. And we have now a lot of new questions, especially, sorry, some strange things happening outside. We have a lot of questions linked about the description of these different horizons, how to classify them, and more especially the functional links between humus form horizon and between these different humus systems and the practical things on the field. If we take a look at the humus form horizon in Switzerland in a, let's say, in a stupid way, I mean, if you just take the most common book used by people working on the field with humus form, you basically have three horizons, OL, OF or F, and OH, subdivide themselves into different sub-horizons, and all these things are mainly linked to the amount of recognizable remains and fine organic matter. And if you put all these different horizons together, nowadays we have basically three typical humus forms used in the Swiss classification. It means mul, moder, and raw humus, which you can link to more humus forms. And that's almost all. We have some specific things, but that's not really well developed. For example, if you get deeper in the classification of humus form in some old or not very well-known paper, you have something with Xero, just used when the humus form is very dry, or hydro, feucht in German, in wet environment or place. And the only thing you have to see is if you have signs of hydromorphy, and that's already enough to put hydro in front of the humus form, so that's not very accurate now. And if you get deeper again, you can find just some small thing about anmor, some general things about torf pit, and there's 1 or 2 times you can read tangel, but that's basically all. And So we have now a lot of questions and some future challenges to solve. Basically, the next year we would like to have a better definition of this horizon, and to have a better idea of the processes linked with all this horizon, and what kind of lab and field analysis should we officially do or perform to have something very the whole kind of thing through the whole Switzerland. And it's linked to some open question now, like for example, very basically, what humus form should we include in this revision of this classification system? For example, should we just take into account the very basic one we just had a look before, so take into account the atypical one like tangel, or that kind of things? Another big question is, what is the link to the water regime between humus form and this revision of the classification? Because for the soil classification system, we in Switzerland, that's really the first point we take into account, the water regime. And now we are just wondering if it's also the case for the humus forms. Another question is also about local forms, because Switzerland is very small, kind of small, but we have a lot of geological things, 2 or 3 climates, for example, between the north and the south of the Alps, or the middle of the Alps, and you have a lot, or you can have a lot of very specific things, and we are just wondering if it's worth to take into account just some very specific thing in the classification, or just stay at a bigger level. Okay, there's a fire in the Department of Augusto. And yeah, the last and open question is, now we are having some discussion with colleagues about what is the link to and with the existing system of humus form. What kind of link can we do with this new system of classification in Switzerland and the other one already in place through Europe? For example, the German one is very well known by certain people working in the field, or is it possible to have some link with the Humusica system? And that's now some open question. And we really need these things the next year to have a better idea of all these things, and to have a better use of the soil, especially in this area between agricultural and forested area. And that's all for me.